look after them. Rama, Rama, Hari, 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 Krishna, Krishna, Hari Rama, Hari Rama, 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 Hari, Hari,
Guru Maharaj, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm ready to stream.
Okay. So, yeah, we'll just turn everything on. Rama, Rama, Hari, 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 Krishna, Krishna. Can turn Zoom. Oh, okay. Okay. So we're online already, are we?
Yes, Guru Maharaj. Just started.
Okay. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Rusby Hari's gone, is it? Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Oh. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Oh, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare. Oh, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Okay, devotees, are you okay if we read? Everyone's all right? We were going to have a kirtan at the end, but I think we'll postpone it till next week. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presta Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatyadesh Sri Krishna Caitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivas Adi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchikalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes, okay, devotees, so here we go. Right, here we go. And we are in San Francisco, and it's the installation ceremony for Jagannath Baladev Subhadra. 3-foot-high deities, whatever, approximately a meter, a little less, carved by Shamsundar Prabhu. And Srila Prabhupada is giving a class. And if you remember, the one young boy put his hand up and started speaking. The term used is earnestly, like, I got something to say here. Yes. But then he quickly sort of drifted off into confusion. So Prabhupada is addressing this. He's been addressing this. Something, don't know. Yeah, Prabhupada's addressing all of this, which is his great mercy. All right, so Srila Prabhupada paused. The philosophical talk had been rigorous, lasting about 45 minutes. He wasn't tired. He could have gone on. But now he wanted to conduct the deity installation. Everything necessary for spiritual life was here. The temple, the devotees, the books, the deity, prasadam. He wanted these young people to take advantage of it. Why should they remain living like animals and thinking of spiritual life as a vague groping for, quote unquote, something? Because it's really true. It's really so true. They came to San Francisco. It's 67, it's March 67. And the hippie movement started basically in 65 and then really sort of exploded, something like that, in 66. And 67 March, it was still going full speed ahead. And they had aspirations, the aspirations, basically were quite lofty aspirations of spirituality, God, consciousness. Well, some of them quite seriously wanted to become God. That's a pretty lofty aspiration. But others, that's just sort of stupid. But others, they really wanted to achieve a higher state, a better state. But because it's just all, just drug-induced, full of hallucinations and just an extreme lack of clarity, and totally unauthorized and with no one to guide them, no one worth being a guide to guide them. I mean, they had people who were sort of trying to guide them, who thought they could, and they thought those people could guide them. But, oh, Krishna, sure. Talk about the blind leading the blind. And the blind leading the blind, but the first blind who were leading the other blind, they were just more clever at expressing their ideas in attractive ways and using language, terminologies, and so on, that the ones being led really took very seriously and thought were just really valuable ideas. Oh, it's incredible. But they were just led down the proverbial garden path. It's just disastrous. I remember, let me be quite honest, I was like that myself. I mean, I was part of it in my own way, but still part of it. And I remember, one thing I remember so vividly, and was just so stupid, was my few friends and I, somebody got a copy of the latest Beatles record, which was all, just all this sort of stuff. And we were listening to it for the first time. And there was one song completely absurd. Would you believe? Fasten your seatbelts. I am the walrus. And we're listening to this. And it's the Beatles, so, the Beatles are just like superhumans. And there's this one verse or few lines. It's John Lennon singing. And he sings, I am you, and you are me, and we are all together. And I remember hearing that for the first time, and all of us, there's like 4 of us or so, every one of us just simultaneously, we just went, wow. Confession. Yeah, I don't want to fool you into thinking I'm something that I'm not. So, but it's just stupidity. Just total stupidity. I am you and you are me. What is that? It's just total absurdity. What can I say? The blind leading the blind. But they were just more clever. They were exceptionally clever. And we're just exceptionally, just typically stupid, actually. So, yes. So Prabhupada's been pointing these things out, and it's like, in the midst of this fantastic darkness, where these young people, I remember when Srila Prabhupada came to the university, and I saw Prabhupada for the first time, completely unexpectedly. I had no idea. it was going to happen, and I didn't know what was going on when it did happen. But Srila Prabhupada, in the class he gave, which I battled to understand because of my ignorance, and his accent took a little, not too much, but a little getting used to. And Prabhupada told us, the assembled students, there's probably 50 of us standing around by that time. Prabhupada said, you are the flowers of your country. And, he said you should develop your Krishna consciousness and really make the country worthwhile. And Prabhupada said, don't commit suicide. Yeah, don't commit suicide. I mean, I wasn't thinking of committing suicide at all, but it was just very interesting. Don't commit suicide. Like, don't do something just crazy and just miss the opportunity, because we were the flowers of the country. So those young people with these high aspirations, being led by these clever people. Timothy Leary was a professor from Harvard. He was very high-level intellectual, so very clever. And Richard Alpert, his associate, also, as far as I know, from a professor or something from Harvard. And they started manufacturing LSD. And because, they're just really clever. So they convinced the young people to get into this. What was the mantra was, what was it? Tune in. Oh, anyway, something or other, tune in and drop out. And the young people were just doing it. And they were ending up sleeping literally in the streets with literally nothing other than the clothes they were wearing every day, the same clothes. And just in this pathetic state. But there's this whole idea of higher consciousness and all that. But now Prabhupada's there. Prabhupada's there, the only one with an operative brain. I mean, his disciples are also, getting together, but not like Prabhupada. What mercy, what incredible mercy for those young people. So, they should take advantage of Krishna's mercy and be successful and happy. And for this, Prabhupada was their tireless servant. Prabhupada. So, Hayagriva, come here. This Hayagriva, we mentioned the other day, he had a master's degree in English as a qualified person, and he was a lecturer in English. So, he was a literate person, a very literate person. And he was from New York, from the first group, not just one of these ones from San Francisco. So, Hayagriva, come here. Prabhupada had the devotees arrange for a large candle on a plate. The ceremony he had planned would be a simple one, with devotees and guests, one after another, coming up and offering the flame in circles before the Jagannath deities. This should be lighted up, Srila Prabhupada said. And when there's kirtan, one must be doing like this before the deity, like this. Srila Prabhupada moved his hands around in a circle before the deity, offering the candle like we offer to Damodar. You see, Hayagriva, yes, yes. Prabhupada, yes, with the kirtan. And then when one person is tired, he should hand it over to another person, devotee. When he is tired, he should give to another, as long as the kirtan will go on. This should be done with the kirtan just now. Do you follow? Yes? You begin, and when you're tired, you hand over to another. It will go on like that. Srila Prabhupada, from his seat, guided Hayagriva in approaching the deity with the lit candle. Some of the girls tittered with nervous expectation. Before the deity, Srila Prabhupada said, "All right, now better begin kirtan." Prabhupada began playing kartals and singing the Hare Krishna mantra to the popular melody he had introduced in America, which is the simple melody. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. That's the melody. Keep it simple. Just in front, he called out, gesturing to Hayagriva to stand more directly before the deities. Devotees and guests began rising to their feet and dancing, arms raised, bodies swaying rhythmically back and forth as they faced the bright, personal forms of the deities and chanted. Colored lights within the canopy began flashing intermittently, blue, red, and yellow, highlighting the extraordinary eyes of Lord Jagannath, Subhadra, and Balaram. Mukunda, who had arranged the lights, smiled and looked to Swamiji, hoping for approval. Prabhupada nodded and continued forcefully singing Hare Krishna. The young hippies were enthusiastic in singing and dancing, knowing that the kirtan usually lasted an hour. Some had grasped the Swami's words when he spoke of fixing the mind on the personal form of the Supreme Lord. And they had understood when he had looked up at the deities and said, "Here is Krishna." Yeah, there's a nice little, very short little story. Srila Prabhupada in London, in Berry Place, the first central London temple. After some years they got another one, which is even more central and much bigger, Soho Street. But Prabhupada sitting in front of the deities, because in that Berry Place temple, the temple room, sort of something like this, but narrower and longer, probably the same size. I mean, the same floor area, but narrower and longer. And the altar's there, and Prabhupada's Vyasasan was even closer, a little closer to the altar than I am. And Srila Prabhupada finished the class, but he didn't say, any words like, this is the end of the class. He just sat there and looked at the deities, Radha, Landa, and Ishwara. And then he turned to the devotees after maybe some 20 or 30 seconds. Everyone's just sitting there, wondering what's going to happen. And then Prabhupada turned to the devotees. And Srila Prabhupada said, I have captured Krishna and I'm holding him here for you. Now you just please come and take him in a real heartfelt way. And the devotees were really deeply moved. Okay. So others hadn't followed, but thought that it was just great and blissful to sing Hare Krishna and look at the grinning, big-eyed deities up on the altar amid the flowers and billowing incense. Prabhupada watched with pleasure as one person after another took a turn at offering the candle before Lord Jagannath. This was a simple procedure for installing the deity. Although in big temples in India, the installation of the deity was a complex, exact procedure requiring several days of continuous rituals directed by highly paid priests. In San Francisco, there were no Brahmin priests to pay, and the many other standards would be impossible to maintain. For non-Hindus to handle Lord Jagannath and conduct his worship would be considered heresy by the caste-conscious Brahmins of India. Well, some of them, particularly in Orissa. Except for Prabhupada, none of the persons present would have been allowed even to enter the temple at Jagannath Puri. The white man, the Westerner, was not allowed to see Lord Jagannath except once a year as he rode in his cart during the Rath Yatra festival. But these restrictions were social customs, not the scriptural injunctions. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had introduced deity worship and initiation for anyone, regardless of caste, race, or nationality. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati's father, had longed for the day when the people of the West would mingle with their Indian brothers and chant Hare Krishna. Excuse me. Srila Prabhupada had come to the West to fulfill the desires and the vision of his spiritual master and of Bhaktivinoda Thakur by creating Vaishnavas among the Westerners. Now, if the Westerners were to become actual devotees, they would have to be given the deity worship. Now, if the Westerners were to become actual devotees, they would have to be given the deity worship. Otherwise, it would be more difficult for them to become purified. It's an important point, which, I forget when we read about this. Prabhupada in Caitanya Charitamrita, there's a verse in which Lord Caitanya, I think it's somewhere in Caitanya Charitamrita, Lord Caitanya says that you don't need to do anything except chant Hare Krishna. Nothing else. Just chant Hare Krishna. But as Srila Prabhupada gives an extensive purport in which he refers to Srila Jiva Goswami, saying that yes, this is true, as long as you chant Hare Krishna purely, actually purely, and actually all the time purely, not just, now and then or something like that. So if you do that, you don't need anything else. So Srila Prabhupada's referring to and quoting Srila Jiva Goswami, who is saying like that's fine, as long as you chant Hare Krishna completely purely, completely all the time. But he says that the people we are dealing with, they can't do that. So therefore, they need a whole program of activity, and particularly important amongst which is deity worship. This is what Prabhupada's doing here. That if the Westerners, and that's us, by the way, if the Westerners were to become actual devotees, they'd have to be given deity worship because it's so purifying. So purifying. And therefore, Prabhupada makes the point, and Jiva Goswami makes the point, therefore, initiation has to be there because you can't worship the deity without initiation. So initiation has to be there, deity worship has to be there, and the various other things. Srila Prabhupada was confident in his spiritual master's direction and in the scriptures. He had faith that Lord Jagannath, is that them knocking on the door? Srila Prabhupada was confident in his spiritual master's direction and in the scriptures. He had faith that Lord Jagannath was especially merciful to the fallen. He prayed that the Lord of the universe would not be offended by his reception at New Jagannath Puri. When the kirtan ended, Prabhupada asked Haridas to bring him the candle. Prabhupada passed his hands across the flame and touched them to his forehead. Yes, he said, show everyone, each and every one, whatever they can contribute. Here, take it like this and show everyone. In other words, they were not familiar with this practice in the arti, you know the practice. Prabhupada hadn't started introducing that yet. Okay. Here, take it like this and show everyone. He indicated that Haridas should present the candle before each person in the room, so that all present would touch their hands to the flame as he had shown, and then touch their foreheads. As Haridas went from person to person, a few devotees dropped some coins on the plate, and others followed. Yeah. Of course, we had, when we were doing book distribution, we had a practice. People would put their hands into their pockets and pull out some coins, and we'd tell them, paper is lighter. And we have to carry this around all day. So, is that okay? Paper is lighter, which is true, of course. Srila Prabhupada explained further The Bhagavatam has recommended hearing, chanting, thinking, and worshipping. This process, which we just now introduced on the advent of Jagannath Swami, means that now this temple is now completely fixed. So this is the worshipping process. This is called arti. So at the end of kirtan, this arti will go on. And the worshipping process is to take the heat of the light and, whatever your condition is, pay something for the worship. So this simple process, if you follow, you just see how you realize the absolute truth. Another thing I request you, all the devotees, when you come to the temple, you bring one fruit and one flower. If you can bring more fruit, more flour, it's very good. If not, it is not very expensive to bring one fruit and one flower and offer it to the deity. So I will request you, when you come to the temple, you bring this. Whatever fruit it may be, it does not mean that you have to bring very costly fruit, any fruit. Whatever you can afford, one fruit and one flower. He paused, looking around the room. Yes. Yes. Yes, now you can distribute prasadam. The guests sat in rows on the floor, and the devotees began serving prasadam, offering the first plate to Prabhupada. The food preparations were those Prabhupada had personally taught the devotees in his kitchen. Samosas, what we call in South Africa, for some unknown reason, kachoris. You know, while I was in England, the first 7 years of my life in Krishna consciousness, there were two things. One is that we never, ever cooked in anything other than ghee, ever, for anything. I mean, Sunday feast and all that for hundreds of people, only ghee. And the second thing was that what in South Africa is called a kachori, we were brought up that it's a samosa, as taught by Srila Prabhupada. So anyway, when in Rome, you know the story. Okay. Samosas, halava, puris, rice, several cooked vegetables, fruit chutney, sweets, all the Sunday specials. The guests loved the prasadam and ate as much as they could get, because, you know, many of them, they wouldn't get anything of any sort for days. Did you hear that? It's a sort of a lecture by Steve Jobs at the university where he studied, which is said to be the most powerful lecture ever given. If you look, you can look it up on the internet, and a special lecture by Steve Jobs. And he's speaking at the university where he studied, which was in Florida. And he said, every Sunday in that lecture, he says, every Sunday I would go to the Hare Krishna temple and get food. And he said, it was the only decent meal I got every week. Yeah, it's really quite something. Okay, so here we are. While the devotees, especially the expert women, served more and more prasadam, the guests relaxed and enjoyed an evening of feasting and convivial conversation. After Prabhupada tasted all the preparations, he looked up with raised eyebrows. Very nice preparations. All glories to the cookers. I don't know if you heard me tell the story, you might well have heard. Prabhupada in Los Angeles giving the Sunday class, and class finishes, and that's the end of the program, and everyone goes outside to take the feast. Out right in front of the temple, they have a lawn there. But Prabhupada didn't go out. Someone wanted to speak to him, so he remained for like maybe 15 minutes or something. And then he came out the front. And there were the devotees and the guests and the people, like a couple of hundred or something, maybe more, people, devotees and friends, eating prasadam and talking away, as happens. And Srila Prabhupada stopped and looked at this scene. And Prabhupada said to the devotees who were with him, walking out with him, Prabhupada said, if it was not for prasadam, I would not have made any disciples. Right. A few minutes later, as the feasting continued, Srila Prabhupada spoke into the microphone. Jagannatha Swami, Nayana Patagami, Bhavatu Me. Howard means Hayagriva. Repeat this. Hayagriva swallowed, cleared his throat, and spoke up. Jagannatha Swami, Nayana Patagami, Bhavatu Me. Prabhupada, yes, this should be chanted. Jagannatha Swami, Nayana Patagami, Bhavatu Me. A boy asked what it meant. Hayagriva replied, Lord of the universe, please be present before me. When Prabhupada noticed an older, respectably dressed man leaving the room without receiving a feast plate, Prabhupada became concerned. Oh, why is he going away? Ask him to come. A boy ran after him, opening the temple door and calling, please don't leave. Swamiji requests. As the man re-entered the storefront, Prabhupada requested, please, take prasadam. And turning to the servers, he instructed, give him first. And because Prabhupada, when there were, respectable people, because a lot of, in these situations, it's just young people, late teens and early to mid-20s. But when some respectable adult came, Prabhupada would always see that they looked after nicely. And so the feasting continued beneath the altar of Lord Jagannath and under the auspices of his servant, Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We'll probably continue tomorrow. We'll see. So, there you go, devotees. Hari Bol. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Maharaj, can I ask a question?
Yes.